This is Mac OS Ken.
More talk of an iPhone SuperCycle. How would you define a robot? And the first teaser is out for F1. It is Tuesday, the 9th of July, 2024. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSKen. Honest question. What defines a supercycle as far as Wedbush analyst Daniel Ives is concerned? For years, he has asserted that about a quarter of Apple's billion-plus iPhone installed base was ripe for an upgrade. And of course, some years could see a bigger number of device upgrades. This year, that could be thanks to the AI push in the next round of iPhones, compliments of Apple Intelligence. And here is where we join Mr. Ives, or where Wall Street does. On Monday, Apple 3.0 ran part of a note he wrote. In it, he said his team believes the street is starting to slowly recognize what a big deal Apple's AI play will be, referring to Apple as the gatekeepers of the consumer AI revolution. Dude, maybe don't say gatekeepers. And yet gatekeepers may be what he means. The way he sees it, Google and Meta will likely have to integrate their AI models and technology into Apple Intelligence if they want mainline access to the 1.5 billion iPhones out there. Quoting his note, "We expect developers over the next 6 to 12 months will build hundreds of generative AI-driven apps that will be key ingredients in the recipe for success for Apple as its technology stack creates the core building blocks of the consumer AI tidal wave we see coming, starting with iPhone 16 in mid-September." Not only will iPhone rise in his estimation, it has also stopped falling. The note says he and his are also seeing more signs of iPhone stabilization based on their recent Asia supply chain checks, which is a very good sign heading into the monumental iPhone 16 upgrade cycle. Team Wedbush thinks last quarter will be the last negative quarter for iPhone growth in China. They expect a turnaround beginning in the September quarter, though you gotta figure that's going to be weighted toward the end of the September quarter. Mr. Ives has an outperform rating on Apple shares. His 12-month price target on the shares is a street high $275. While Apple has gone from AI laggard to AI gatekeeper in some estimations, the time that it was a laggard could make it a winner now. That is the thinking of Melius research analyst Ben Reitzes. On Monday, Barron's had Reitzes calling out a few such companies. The way he sees it, the first half of 2024 saw NVIDIA, Broadcom, and a few other chip makers as the big beneficiaries of the artificial intelligence boom. Now, he and his are believers in a catch-up trade for some in semiconductors, hardware, and even software, those with lower expectation. On the list are AMD, Intel, and Apple. On the first two, Reitzes writes, AMD may be the cleaner way to play these cycles, since expectations have been lowered for its AI accelerators, and it lacks Intel's foundry overhang. However, Intel is much more unloved into what could be a seasonal bounce. Apple's inclusion on that catch-up list might be surprising given its steep rise since WWDC, but, says Barron's, Reitzes thinks there is more to come with the coming iPhone launch, which he has previously suggested could lead to a supercycle with growth in revenue generated from the smartphone of about 20% for up to 2 years. Mr. Reitzes has a buy rating on Apple shares. His price target on the shares is $260. While Ives and Reitzes weren't the only sources of positivity for Apple on Monday, they probably helped push shares in the Cupertino company higher. 5 record closes in 5 trading sessions for ticker symbol AAPL, and a return to the top spot. Apple ended the day up 148. Microsoft ended the day down 132. That was enough to drop Mr. Softy's market cap to $3.465 trillion. Meanwhile, Apple's rose to $3.493 trillion. That made it the most valuable publicly traded company on the planet, at least for a day. Apple Insider says Microsoft in China is switching its staff from Android phones to iPhone. The piece cites a Bloomberg report saying staff using Android smartphones, including China's own Huawei or Xiaomi, will be provided with an iPhone 15. Probably each. I doubt they will have to share an iPhone 15. The issue seems to be with required apps and the gates through which such apps must travel. According to the piece, one of the issues prompting the switch concerns how the Google Play Store is not available in mainland China, but it is in Hong Kong, where the switch is also being implemented. Android owners on the China mainland have instead had to use app platforms run by Huawei or Xiaomi. Microsoft has now blocked access to those sites. Of course, there is an app store in China. Apple Insider says Microsoft's intention is that all staff switching to iPhones will be able to use the Microsoft Authenticator Password Manager plus its Identity Pass app. The move to iPhone is set to be complete by September of this year. The beta beat goes on. A few pieces from MacRumors say Apple has seeded the third developer betas of iOS and iPadOS 18 to developers, along with the third betas of watchOS 11, tvOS 18, and visionOS 2. Apple's apparently working on some kind of home accessory. No, it doesn't sound like news exactly, though there is more to it. MacRumors says it has spotted something in Apple code referred to as Home Accessory 17,1, a new identifier category for the Cupertino company, though similar to the HomePod's Audio Accessory Identifier. According to the piece, the 17,1 in the identifier name suggests that this device may receive Apple's upcoming A18 chip, which reports indicate will be used in all 4 iPhone 16 models later this year. With the A18 chip, the home accessory device would have the power for Apple Intelligence. Site says it looks like the device will run a variant of tvOS, again, similar to HomePod. The question now, is this Apple's domestic robot? Personally, I think we should differentiate between robots and devices that employ robotics. Still, a piece from 9to5Mac has Bloomberg's Mark Gurman saying, Apple is working on a tabletop robot. Writing this weekend in his Power On newsletter, Gurman indicated that people hoping to see Apple Intelligence turn up in the Cupertino company's current home devices will be disappointed. They'll have to wait until the company introduces its AI-powered tabletop robot, wrote Gurman, something he's talked about for several months. According to a report of Gurman's in April, Apple has developed an advanced tabletop home device that uses robotics to move a display around. The idea was to have the display mimic the head movements, such as nodding, of a person on a FaceTime session. It would also have features to precisely lock in on a single person among a crowd during a video call. Yeah, based on that description, I'm going to go with robot-ish. Apple Retail is closing a store in Sweden and doesn't really seem to be replacing it. Writing for his Tabletops newsletter, Michael Stieber says the Cupertino company is closing Apple Vala Centrum in Helsingborg this Saturday, the 13th of July. Stieber says the store will be replaced by Apple Mall of Scandinavia, though he admits that calling the one a replacement for the other is something of a stretch. The new location in Solna is about 340 miles from the closing store in Helsingborg. The closure this Saturday will take the Apple Store count in Sweden from 3 to 2. No date has been announced for the Apple Mall of Scandinavia opening, just sometime in 2024. And finally today, not since 1989's Batman or 1990's Dick Tracy have I been this conscious of a push to make a movie a blockbuster. Roughly 1 year before its release date, 9to5Mac says Apple has released the first teaser for F1. That's the Brad Pitt Apple Originals film about F1 racing. I know it's tough to tell based on the title. I will say this, the trailer is pulse-pounding. And it should be. It's not just that it's about fast cars, though that alone can do it. Probably also has to do with the way the film was shot. The piece highlights a Deadline interview with F1 director Joseph Kosinski and producer Jerry Bruckheimer. Not only was a lot of it shot in full IMAX, they also built special cameras to catch the action. F1 was shot with real actors driving real vehicles around real tracks, according to 9to5Mac. The piece quotes Kosinski as saying, "We have bespoke cameras for this that are very small and light so they don't impede the performance of the car too much. And that's key because you don't want to have a race car and then put 200 pounds of gear on it." Our camera mounts were designed with Mercedes as well. The cameras are specially designed by Sony. It's the next generation from what we did on Top Gun Maverick, which he also directed. Everything is much smaller, and the big innovation is that we're now able to control the movement of the cameras on the cars. With the release date of the 26th of June, 2025, why are we hearing so much about this movie now? Well, like Batman and Dick Tracy and, I don't know, the original Jurassic Park maybe. Kind of feels like Apple doesn't want you to be able to move without being aware of this film. As 9to5Mac puts it, F1 truly seems like a different kind of movie for Apple. It's not designed for Oscar contention, though Apple will undoubtedly promote it during awards season. And it's not a low-budget indie simply to boost the Apple TV Plus catalog. Instead, this is a true summer blockbuster in the works, designed for box office success. So, expect to hear about it again a time or two. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSCan. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. info@macoscan.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.